Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most pivotal and devastating conflicts in human history, the First World War. It was called the War to End All Wars, a conflict that redrew the map of the world and set the stage for the turbulent 20th century. But how did it all begin? How did it unfold? And what was its lasting legacy? Let's find out. Our story starts in the summer of 1914. Europe was a complex web of alliances, a continent brimming with imperial ambitions, militarism, and intense nationalism. Think of it like a powder keg, just waiting for a spark. And that spark came on June 28, 1914, in the city of Sarajevo. A young Serbian nationalist named Gavrilo Princip assassinated Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne. This single act of political violence set off a catastrophic chain reaction. Austria-Hungary, determined to punish Serbia, issued a harsh ultimatum. When Serbia couldn't fully comply, Austria-Hungary declared war. This is where the tangled alliances came into play. Russia, seeing itself as the protector of the Slavic peoples, began to mobilize its army to support Serbia. This mobilization was seen as a direct threat by Germany, which was allied with Austria. So, Germany declared war on Russia. Then, following its long-held military strategy known as the Schlieffen Plan, Germany invaded neutral Belgium to get to France, which was Russia's ally. This violation of Belgian neutrality was the final straw for Great Britain, which had a treaty to protect Belgium. Britain declared war on Germany, and just like that, within a few short weeks, the great powers of Europe were at war. On one side, we had the Central Powers, primarily Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire. On the other, we had the Allied powers, led by France, Great Britain, and Russia. Later, other nations would join, most notably Italy and, crucially, the United States. Everyone thought it would be a short, glorious war. The soldiers marching off in the summer of 1914 famously believed they would be home by Christmas. They couldn't have been more wrong. The German advance into France was initially swift, but it was halted at the Battle of the Marne. What followed was a race to the sea, as both sides tried to outflank each other. The result, a continuous line of trenches stretching from the Swiss border all the way to the North Sea. This was the birth of the Western Front, the iconic and horrifying symbol of World War I. Life in the trenches was hell on earth. Soldiers lived in mud, surrounded by rats, lice, and the constant threat of death. The conditions were unspeakable. Days were spent in monotonous boredom, punctuated by moments of sheer terror. The command over the top meant climbing out of the relative safety of the trench and advancing across no man's land, a barren wasteland of craters and barbed wire, straight into a hail of machine gun fire. The scale of the slaughter was unprecedented. Battles like the Somme and Verdun became synonymous with mass casualties. At the Somme in 1916, the British Army suffered nearly 60,000 casualties on the very first day. These battles often gained only a few miles of territory, if any, at an astronomical human cost. This was a new kind of industrial warfare. Technology played a huge and terrible role. The machine gun made defensive positions incredibly strong, leading to the stalemate. Heavy artillery could rain down shells for days on end, obliterating landscapes and shattering nerves. Then came even more terrifying innovations. Poison gas, first used by the Germans, caused agonizing deaths and widespread panic. The British introduced the tank, a clumsy but revolutionary armored vehicle designed to cross no man's land and break through enemy lines. And high above the battlefield, aircraft, a brand new invention, evolved from simple reconnaissance tools into deadly dogfighting machines. While the Western Front is the most famous theater of the war, the conflict was truly global. On the Eastern Front, the fighting was more mobile but just as brutal, pitting Germany and Austria-Hungary against the massive but poorly equipped Russian army. The strain of the war on Russia was immense, leading to widespread discontent, revolution, and in 1917, the collapse of the Tsarist regime and Russia's eventual withdrawal from the war. There was fighting in the mountains between Italy and Austria, in the Balkans, and in the Middle East, where the British, with figures like Lawrence of Arabia, fought against the Ottoman Empire. The war also extended to colonies in Africa and Asia, as imperial powers drew on the resources and manpower of their global empires. For the first few years of the war, the United States remained officially neutral, though it was a major supplier of goods to the Allies. Public opinion was divided. However, a couple of key events shifted the tide. Germany's policy of unrestricted submarine warfare, which included the sinking of passenger ships like the Lusitania in 1915, outraged many Americans. The final push came in 1917 with the interception of the Zimmermann telegram. This was a secret message from Germany to Mexico, proposing a military alliance against the United States if America entered the war. The revelation of this telegram was explosive. In April 1917, President Woodrow Wilson asked Congress to declare war on Germany, stating that the world must be made safe for democracy. The arrival of fresh, well-equipped American troops, known as doughboys, provided a much-needed boost to the exhausted Allied forces. By 1918, the Central Powers were crumbling from within. Years of naval blockade had led to severe food and material shortages in Germany. The German Spring Offensive of 1918, a last-ditch effort to win the war before the American forces arrived in large numbers, initially made gains, but ultimately failed. The Allied counterattack, known as the 100 Days Offensive, was relentless. With its allies collapsing and revolution brewing at home, the German High Command realized the war was lost. On November 11, 1918, at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, an armistice was signed. The guns on the Western Front finally fell silent. The aftermath was profound. The world was forever changed. The war led to the collapse of four great empires: the German, the Austro-Hungarian, the Russian, and the Ottoman. New countries were carved out of their territories, creating a new political map of Europe and the Middle East, but also sowing the seeds of future conflicts. The human cost was staggering, with an estimated 15 to 22 million deaths, both military and civilian. A whole generation, the lost generation, was scarred by the trauma of the war. In 1919, the victorious powers met in Paris to hammer out a peace treaty. The resulting Treaty of Versailles placed heavy blame and crippling financial reparations on Germany, while intended to prevent future aggression. Many historians argue that its harsh terms created deep resentment and economic instability in Germany, which directly contributed to the rise of extremist ideologies and, ultimately, the outbreak of World War II just 2 decades later. So, the war to end all wars tragically did nothing of the sort. It was a brutal, world-shattering event that ushered in an age of new technologies, new ideologies, and new conflicts. It fundamentally reshaped our world in ways we still feel today. Understanding World War I isn't just about learning history. It's about understanding the complex forces that continue to shape our modern reality. Thanks for watching. If you found this video informative, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more deep dives into history. Let me know in the comments what historical event you'd like to see covered next. Until then, stay curious